Good evening and welcome to the Fort Smith City Board of Directors meeting, our first meeting for the year 2025, January 7th. Keep in mind these meetings are being televised live for the benefit of our residents who cannot attend with us in person. At this time, I'm going to call District Court Judge Sam Terry to administer the oath of office to all ward directors for the term of January 1, 2025 through December 31 of 2028. Judge, welcome.
Of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Arkansas, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of City Director, Ward 1 of the City of Fort Smith, upon which you are about to enter. I do. Congratulations, Director Regan. Thank you so much. Director, good. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Arkansas, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of City Director, Ward 2 of the City of Fort Smith, Arkansas, upon which you are about to enter? Yes, sir, I do. Congratulations. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Arkansas, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of City Director, Ward 3 of the City of Fort Smith, Arkansas, upon which you're about to enter?
Yes, I do.
Congratulations. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Arkansas, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of City Director, Ward 4 of the City of Fort Smith, Arkansas, upon which you're about to enter?
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do you want us?
Can we take a picture?
Yes. Okay, group picture on the
Oh, okay.
You guys may have to scoot in. Says this podium. Okay, everybody, George, Director Travis, would you mind stepping in? Okay, in 3, 2, 1. 1 second. 3, 2, 1. Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
If any other board members would like photographs with your families, go ahead and take this time to do so.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Can?
Yeah.
You want one?
Yeah. And go take one with the judge.
Do what?
Go take one with the judge. Hey, Judge. Thanks, Judge, for coming over and administering the oath for us this evening. At this time, we're going to have our invocation and pledge of allegiance, and we're going to give our new director the honor of giving us the invocation on this first meeting of 2025. Director Kemp.
Would you pray with me? Lord Almighty, we come to you tonight, thanking you for the new year of 2025. And you have not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. We thank you for the promises that you will keep us in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you, because we trust in you. And we thank you for your gifts, and we pray that we will steward them well, and we pray for the peace and the prosperity of the Fort Smith and the River Valley. Guide us tonight, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Director Neil Martin, would you lead us in the pledge? Oh. There's a flag in the back.
The fire department honor guard posting the colors.
Okay. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you very much.
Forever in service, Ethan. Good job. Forever in service.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Directors Rigo,
Here.
Good,
Here.
Kemp,
Here.
George Kitsavis,
Here.
Christina Kitsavis,
Here.
Settle, Martin.
Here.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I'll ask if there's any board members or board directors that have an item of business not already on this evening's agenda. Okay. Seeing none, we'll ask for approval of the December 17, 2024 regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. This time we'll go right to the agenda. Item number 1, Mr. Dingman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 1 is a resolution affirming that the City of Fort Smith does not support the establishment of a facility for the interim storage of spent nuclear fuel materials within or in close proximity to the city limits of the City of Fort Smith. Staff was asked to bring this resolution to the board for consideration at the previous regular meeting.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. Madam Clerk, did anyone sign up to speak on this item?
Yes, we have one, Patrick McGuire.
Mr. McGuire, you're recognized.
Hey, Josh, you got the wrong board packet up. That's last meeting's.
Good evening. 81 miles northwest of Las Vegas, Nevada, stands Yucca Mountain. The federal government has been storing nuclear waste at that mountain since the 1960s. I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was something like 15, 20 years after they started. They discovered that the waste was leaking out of the containers that they were in. These were all buried underground. The waste then continued to seep into the soil and down into the water table below. Today, Yucca Mountain is a nuclear wasteland. The mountain, and I believe an area 10 miles around that. This is not something we want to have in Fort Smith. And even getting around that, if let's say they find a possible impermeable storage container to keep this stuff in, there's always the danger that it has to be transported to the facility. And the transport itself is subject to, traffic accidents, even terrorist attacks, perhaps even. So I would strongly urge against having such a facility in Fort Smith. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This time we entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. This time we'll entertain board comments. Director Rigo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I obviously agree with this resolution and support it, and I want to commend both the mayor and administration for making it stated and known even before this individual had a meeting, expressing a plan or a proposal for a potential partnership. I'm glad that you all expressed that there was not an interest, and I must say, this is not something I typically do, but I was disappointed in our media partners for running a story without getting balanced commentary from the city of Fort Smith expressing that we did not have a desire for this. And so, obviously don't think it was malicious, but that was certainly disappointing, and I think led to some consternation that would not have otherwise occurred if we had been able to balance that story properly and had that opportunity. So thank you, administration and mayor, for speaking up beforehand about this, and glad to support this tonight.
Okay, thank you. Director Neil Martin.
Yeah, Director Rigo, I think you're right. That's where I found out about it, through the media. I mean, they had come to the mayor, and we said we didn't want it. When we put this up December 17th, we made the motion to put this on the agenda. They had Nuclear One, or whoever the organization is, had the opportunity to come reach out to us and say, no, this is a good idea, and here's why. Did anybody get contacted by that organization? Nope. All right, so I didn't either. That was the opportunity. I think what they say is they want to go by what the community says. And I think this, if it passes, I think is a strong endorsement that we do not want nuclear waste stored in Fort Smith. So I'm looking forward to voting for this resolution.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the board? Okay. Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Directors Rigo,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Item number 2.
The board previously waived parking meter fees at downtown parking meters through January the 3rd, last Friday. This agenda item number 2 is a resolution extending that waiver through February 4th, at which time it should either expire or be replaced by an ordinance waiving parking meter fees permanently. Staff seeks direction from the board on this item.
Okay, thank you. Are there any citizens' comments, Madam Clerk?
None indicating.
Okay, we need a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments from the board?
Mayor, I have comments.
Yes, go ahead.
So, this isn't a permanent waiver of the meters, this is temporary, correct?
Tonight is just a 30-day extension of.
Well, Kevin, how many years have we been discussing this? 3 years, 2 years, 3 years?
Longer than that, George.
Well, I mean, it's
time.
time to either do something, either get rid of the things or not. I'm tired of this.
I was going to make a motion to amend it to July 1st of 2025, and then we can make it final determine the next 2 months.
Everybody I've talked to is just thrilled to death that they don't have to go downtown and pay for parking. It's a convenience that, I think it.
The only question becomes in my mind, George, is what happens if a business requests it?
Request what?
Request a park meter. That's the only thing I would ask is if we get rid of them, let's say a business X wants to put it in front of their business because 2 people park in front of their business and it drives their business down. We don't have that in our.
Well, let's let them put a sign up that says parking for business only.
Well, can they do that? I don't know. Those are things I'd like to have a discussion and put some type of policy in place so that.
Well, if you want to go to July 1st, that's fine. I'll go along with that.
I was going to make a motion to go to July 1st with this ordinance and then allow us to come back in February, March, put something more permanent in place, put some rules around it and go from there.
All right.
Director Christina Katsavas was next in the queue.
We've gone over a year now without parking meters downtown, so I don't think we have to speak in hypotheticals. I think if these things were going to happen, we would know about it now. It's been over a year. I mean, I would be fine with getting rid of them completely.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. Director Neil Martin.
So if we amend it and we move it back to a certain period of time, July, whatever that is, I would like to see the police do the study that they did. So the study that we got was pretty conclusive. It was shortly after we made this, we took the meters out, and honestly, when we saw it, I was like, well, to me, it seems too early to fully know the impact of it. So I would be fine getting rid of it, but however, if we do move it back, I'd like the police to do another study on it just to make sure that we're good. now that we've been a year out from removing the meters.
Okay, I'm sorry. Are you finished? Director Kemp was next in the queue, and then Director Rego.
Well, I will agree with you, Director Martin, that it did seem like, whoa, what's this going to do or what's it going to be like? But at the same time, I hear George Casavas, Director Casavas' opinion. I agree. There's no reason to keep talking about it when there's other important matters for the city of Fort Smith to discuss. And I agree with Director Christina Casavas that why not just remove them now to show the gesture of progress and not have the eyesore of antiquated meters. And even if we do want to come back, reserve the right to discuss maybe if businesses are needing something, some modernized approach that could be sequestered to one section or something in that regards, or some sort of ordinance that's passed that would allow us to put in not entire Garrison Avenue, but filling in where businesses may need support. But right now, I've come down to Garrison a lot more than I have recently to come down here, and I've been able to park everywhere I need to park. Parking is plenty and available.
Director Rego.
Thank you, Mayor. As the person who got the ball rolling on this initially back around this time last year, I certainly support what Director Christina Katsavas and Director George and Director Kemp had to say as far as moving forward on removing these with you don't need to dawdle around about it. I do think that what Director Settle said is probably a good idea in the sense of extending the time horizon from February, which will be on top of us, before we could probably even turn around, into that second or early third quarter, just to give you all in administration maximum flexibility on, presenting the a couple of concluding options for us. So I certainly think Director Settle was going down the right path with extending that time horizon a little bit, but I think you can see here, which is what you requested in the memo from the discussion, that there's a clear desire to move on from permanent all over parking meters downtown. So I support definitely extending the time horizon past February, but seeing what administration can bring to us probably sooner rather than later.
Director Settle, did anyone else have any comments? Director, Mr. Administrator.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
And just to those comments, and that was the reason for the 30-day extension, just in order to, if business owners or such wanted to reach out to the board of directors, express an interest, if it's felt that more time is needed, and we could even ask the police department to do the similar type of study that they did in March of last year. And so, I mean, that certainly is acceptable. Just recognize that when we do that, there are several provisions in the municipal code that we'll need to repeal, and so they'll have to be by ordinance at that point.
Motion to amend item number 2 from February 4th, 2025. I'll even go to August 1st, 2025.
Second.
Okay. Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the amendment.
This is for the amendment.
Yes.
Directors Good,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Rego.
Yes.
Motion passes 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Do we need a motion on the resolution as amended?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Now, if there are no further comments, please call the roll.
Directors Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Rego.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Item number 3.
Item 3 is a resolution approving a plan to finance the purchase of the 623 Garrison Avenue building for $4 million over a 20-year period, backed by a dedication of a portion of franchise fees the city receives. The term sheet of the proposed financing is included in the packet materials. If such resolution is adopted, the city will start the process of formally dedicating the franchise fee revenue. Alternatively, the city maintains the option of a shorter, 5-year financing option that is within the bounds of Amendment 78 of the Arkansas Constitution related to financing public improvements. And finally, the city does also have cash reserves sufficient to complete the outright purchase of the property and avoid financing costs altogether. With that introduction, staff will stand for questions from the board.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any citizens' comments, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we do have a couple. The first being Kim Fodge.
Good evening. I am for the purchase of 623 Garrison Avenue. However, I believe the board should choose to purchase the building outright for cash and save the taxpayers $2.8 million that would be incurred due to interest if we finance this over 20 years. It's my hope that the board agrees and will vote to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dan Williams.
Happy New Year, and I am in agreement with Ms. Lodge. I believe we should purchase it outright. In October, I went to the meeting where the Central Business Improvement District took place. They were discussing it. They mentioned there was no penalty for early payoff. I see in this new agreement there is a penalty. Within this 4 or 5 years, whoever's finances is going to make $1 million in interest. Is the city buying this property, or is the Central Business Improvement District buying it?
This would be a city purchase, not the CBID.
Then why were they discussing it, and why were they involved in the purchase of it?
I'd say originally we were contemplating going that route to where the CBID might purchase it and then lease it to the city and over time, but we've decided to work directly
I suggest you just go ahead and buy it outright then.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, Madam Clerk?
That's it.
Okay, at this time, we'll entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
I'll make the motion to adopt, but I think we'll probably have to amendment on this. Motion to adopt.
Second.
Thank you. This time, we'll entertain comments from the board. Director Kevin Sell.
Based on what we have and, paying $2.8 million interest, I don't like. I'd like to make an amendment that we purchase the building outright with reserves from the unobligated general fund balance for 2025.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Director Neil Martin.
So I want to move forward purchasing it. However, the caveat is that we have an environmental study that's done, and I think that's underway, before we agree to make the purchase. This is just the accepting the terms. This ordinance is not to make the purchase. It's just accepting the terms. So, am I correct in that, Mr. Dingman?
Well, the way that the resolution that was in the packet is proposed, it would be accepting the terms. Now, we have a purchase and sale agreement that we've already approved. If the board makes the amendment that's contemplated and directs us to purchase outright for cash, we'll complete the due diligence period. We'll still do those sorts of things because that's what you do when you buy real estate. And so then we'll still move towards closing towards the end of February, but we won't have to come back for approval of anything else at that point. Unless the board wants to. I don't know what that would be.
I need to see the environmental.
Sure.
I need to see the environmental. Hopefully everybody's...
And I'll clarify also, it's not an environmental. We're not doing an environmental study. We're doing the 30-day due diligence period where we do a building inspection and determine the issues that are in the building.
So like if there's asbestos, we already know that we've had a mold issue recently.
Yes.
Those things will come out through this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then we decide, how does that impact the purchase price or moving forward altogether, that kind of thing.
I say we wait until that's done before we make the purchase.
How about I make a motion to amend my amendment and say purchase outright with unobligated funds out of general fund, 2025 balance, and the final approval after
the due diligence.
Due diligence is done, brought back to the board, and we final approve it.
Yep.
Does that cover all the bases you're asking for?
Yeah, I second.
Jeff, you're good? Everybody good? So understand what I'm asking for? Purchase outright $4 million unobligated general fund balance for 2025. And after the due diligence is done, the final approval by the board will be given. The board can give final approval for that purchase after we see the due diligence report.
And I did second that, if that was a proper motion.
Proper motion, second. Okay, Director Good.
Just a comment. I'm fine with what we're proposing, but I'd like to hear from our finance director, Mr. Andy Richards. Thank you, Andy. Of course, you've heard the comments, and the board would like to save that money in interest by paying outright. Do we have the cash to move forward with paying for this outright? And because it's not been budgeted for the 2025, is that going to affect any other funding that we might be obligated to in 2025?
I'll say that, I mean, currently, yeah, we do have the funds to buy it outright. As far as the financial position of the general fund, I don't have exact numbers right now because we're right at year end and we're making a lot of adjustments and working through things, but I'm estimating that our fund balance based upon what we projected and then also the budget amendments that we made close to year end, that our general fund balance right now is about $25 million. So that's about 30% our contingency percentage that we track. If you carry that through what we budgeted for 2025, and then also any other budgeted adjustments that were made to 25 already, I estimate the ending fund balance at the end of 25 would be about 18 million. So, you know, we're taking another 4 million for the building of the purchase. Long term, you're right, we're saving $2.8 million in interest. So, I mean, that's definitely the upside. And then, of course, the loan payments were about what we were paying in rent. We buy it outright, we won't be paying $350,000 approximately a year in rent for the building, but we'll still have maintenance costs and those type of things. But I think our budgets, we have to watch our budgets closely. I think in the general fund for the, you know, I'm still looking to see what the impact of the infamous project's going to be once that gets off the ground. Hope there's more economic activity and future growth there, but I think we have to keep an eye on this.
I appreciate the information. Director Settle or Andy, can someone tell me where we are right now with our reserves? What percentage do we have?
You said 30%, is what you said, right? You said 30%?
Yeah. Okay. That's quite a ways from where we've been in the past.
I know. Well, we were 15 million over in 24. I mean, that's part of it. I mean, it was much higher than that, but 24 was a big spending year.
And we got 11 months and 11 and a half months to try to save some money as we go throughout the year to recoup some of that.
Thank you so much, Andy.
Thank you.
Mr. Richards, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Director Kemp.
Yes, and Director Good here did a good job asking a question I was going to ask you about as far as the projected end-of-year balance for 24. Just thoughts that are in my head looking forward. When the city of Fort Smith has the Acme brick plant brought before us, the retention pond, you know, big $8 million project, or the city of Fort Smith police precinct on 71 Highway, will those dollars be paid from which fund? That's, I guess, the question I'd like to ask. Would that be general fund, or is that parks, since it's Acme brick? What about the police precinct, things of that nature?
I mean, the parks and police programs are part of the general fund, so yes, so we're talking about the same money that it would be paid from.
So if we say, where I'm at is, if we say yes to this, what are we saying no to? Because we can't have it all. That's the other thought. I'm not like staying up at night excited about buying this building. If I find it antiquated, there are 3 or 4 inch step-ups. Maggie Rice was kind enough to tell me as I went to the restroom, there's a step up and there's a sticker on the door that says step up, and there genuinely is a step up. And so I think if we do move forward buying it, my next question is forward-looking, the feasibility of making this facility actually fit what we need it to do and the look that we want it to have for City of Fort Smith. If we were talking about bringing businessmen and women in there to set up business in Fort Smith, I would prefer them meet somewhere else versus that building. And I think if we could maybe consider the first floor and the top floor, or, you can't probably do the entire building, but is there a way for us to look at making that building upkeep? I have questions about the roof, and I have questions about if mold is in one part of the building, is it in any other part of the building? Those aren't things like I'm just trying to say no to it. It's just more for me is I don't want it bad and get it bad. I would like to see that, yes, it does make sense to save this monthly rent money, but can we come up with some sort of investment process where the monthly savings goes into a pot of money to a sinking fund to allow renovation money to start accumulating? Can we look into some sort of opportunity down the road? How are we going to make this right for our city employees and not just stick them in a box of a building that maybe isn't who we are culturally in our employment culture?
Thank you. Director Christina Casavage.
Jeff, the mold is being remediated, correct?
That's
by the
correct.
current owner
That's
before
correct.
we buy it, so that shouldn't be an issue. We've already voted to buy the building. We're just deciding on financing terms. I mean, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. Maybe we could put a $2 million down payment down and finance the rest. Maybe we can find something we're comfortable with. The 6th floor is lovely. I've been up there. It is very nice. There's no need for renovations on the 6th floor. I would encourage everyone to tour the building. It doesn't all look like the 3rd floor.
Okay. Any further comments? Okay. Did you want to?
I already made my motion in a
Okay.
second, so
Okay.
motion to amend's on the table. So.
Motion to amend is on the table. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Directors George Katsavas.
Motion to amend, to clarify that,
To
please.
purchase it outright for $4
To
million.
purchase it outright.
$4 million out of the unobligated 2025 general fund balance, and the final approval will come back to the board after the 30-day due diligence
Due
report
diligence,
is
okay.
came to the board.
They'll check it out.
Now, who-
So this is just the, this is,
Does Littlefield still own the building?
Yes.
So we're buying it from him. There's no issue there with him.
No.
He's ready to sell.
Yes.
Okay, I got you. Yes, I vote yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle.
yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Rego.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Kemp.
Yes.
Motion passes 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Need a motion to approve.
Right. We need a motion to approve the
Already have-
amendment.
We already have the motion, so just vote on it as amended.
Okay. We'll vote on it as amended.
Directors Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Rego.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Kemp.
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Motion passes it's approved 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
This time we'll entertain a motion to adopt the emergency clause.
So moved.
Jeff, do we need an emergency clause if we're waiting 30 days?
There's no emergency clause on this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't need an emergency. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, Madam Clerk, please call the roll. We've already called the roll, so we're done with that one. Okay. Let's go to item number 5 then.
4.
Item number 4 amends the master land use plan and rezones property at 1400 South U Street behind the U-Haul store on Towson Avenue. Deputy City Administrator Maggie Rice will introduce this item.
Yes, on December 10th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing to consider the subject master land use plan amendment and rezoning applications. The property, containing an area of 3.8 acres, is located on the south side of South U Street, east of Towson Avenue. The proposed master land use plan amendment to general commercial and zoning to a planned zoning district allows the mini storage land use with development plan approval, as well as other land uses listed within the land use chart. A neighborhood meeting was held on December 3rd. There were no neighboring property owners that attended that meeting. At the Planning Commission meeting, Mr. Philip Lewis was present to represent the items. There were none present to speak in favor or opposition. The Planning Commission voted 7 in favor with 0 opposed to recommend the master land use plan map and zoning map be amended.
Thank you very much. Are there any citizens' comments on this item?
Yes, we have 2. The first is Philip Lewis.
as Maggie laid out, we brought it through Planning Commission, unanimously approved. We held a neighborhood meeting. No one showed up in opposition. It's the U-Haul folks are doing this, and they're going to do two buildings. One will be a U-Box building, which will be 3-story in height, but a single-story building, essentially open, where they store the U-Box individual pods, if you would, where their own employees move them in and out. And then there'll be a 3-story climate-controlled interior storage unit adjacent to it. So we've got 2 of these, one just about finished in Bentonville, one's about to get under construction in Bentonville, fixing to do one in Hot Springs. So it's a nice facility. It's going to be an upgrade for the area. And anyway, just that's it. And we do have a representative from U-Haul as well with us. I think he's on the other list to speak, or the other person.
Okay.
So
Okay, thank you for being here.
sure, absolutely.
If there are no others to speak,
We do have one more.
Okay.
Mr. Brett Hogan.
okay.
I'm Brett Hogan. I think Philip did a good job. The only thing I would like to say is we bought the 2205 Townsend property. It was a vacant Safeway building in 1977. We repurposed that building. We've been there ever since then. And then in 2015, we bought the vacant bowling alley right behind us. And I think purchase, and if we can get y'all to approve this evening, I think this is going to help the community and just kind of go from there with it. So if you have any questions, Philip and I'd be willing to answer, but other than that, I'm good.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no further citizens' comments, need a motion to adopt the ordinance with suspension of the rules.
So move suspension of rules.
Second.
Please read the ordinance.
An ordinance amending the master land use plan map and rezoning identified property and amending the zoning map, and this is for property located at 1400 South U Street.
Any comments from the board? Director Good.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Thank you, Mr. Lewis, for your comments. I think this is going to be a fantastic addition to the neighborhood. So we appreciate you guys wanting to move forward and invest into the city further.
Thank you. Director Settle.
I couldn't agree either, Director Good. This is going to be a great facility. I've seen them. When we go up to St. Louis to play volleyball, I drive by one all the time. It's indoors. You can see the orange containers from the windows. It looks a fabulous piece, so I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much for your investment to the city.
Thank you. If there are no further comments, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Director Settle.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Rigo.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Kemp.
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
This time we'll entertain a motion to adopt the emergency clause.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Directors Martin.
Yes.
Rigo.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Kemp.
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
Motion passes, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Item 5.
This resolution approves a subaward agreement with Metroplan for implementation of projects funded under the EPA's CPRG grant. Director of Citizen Services and Sustainability, Joshua Robertson, will speak to this item.
Thank you, City Administrator. On December 17th, the City Board of Directors authorized the execution of the subrecipient agreements in alignment with the EPA award agreement for the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. The City of Fort Smith will receive $14.5 million. Of the total award, the city will directly receive $11.25 million to implement 3 key initiatives: the urban greenway rehabilitation, public EV charging infrastructure, and solar energy installations. Additionally, the funding will support a dedicated staff position for the next 5 years to ensure the effective project oversight and execution. The proposed resolution on the agenda authorizes the mayor to execute the subrecipient agreement with Metroplan, formalizing the city's role in receiving and administering these funds. The ordinance also ensures the compliance with all grant requirements, facilitates the allocation of necessary staff and resources, and establishes the clear accountability measures for project implementation. The remaining $3.25 million for the e-bike rebate program and workforce development initiatives will be managed under separate subrecipient agreements with Trailblazers and the Arkansas Advanced Energy Foundation, respectively. These programs will be administered on our behalf, and the city will be thoroughly involved to ensure the goals and opportunities of these programs meet our standards and compliance of the grant. And there I'll stand for questions.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any citizens' comments?
Yes, at last count, I think it was 8. The first being Kim Fodge.
Good evening. Excuse me. In my opinion, this agreement puts unnecessary burdens on the city. A lot of resources went into obtaining this grant, and we reap little to no benefits from what I can see. For example, the charging stations. Per Mr. Joshua Robertson, the charging stations, and I quote, "The charging stations will be operated and maintained by a contracted company. The company will receive revenue from the stations, therefore will pay for upkeep and maintenance." These companies need to use their resources to install these charging stations. Also, what happens to the regional energy ambassador after 5 years? Will this become a permanent paid position at our expense? I asked about the long-term cost to the city once the initiatives in this agreement have been implemented. Part of the response I received was, quote, "The solar has a 25-year cost and savings analysis that will be uploaded to our website once the agreement is approved." This reminds me too much of a former Speaker of House's statement that says we have to pass the bill in order to see what's in it. Why can't we see that now so we can determine if this agreement is something the city should continue? What happens after 5 years and the money from the grant dries up? Will the city be left holding the bag? For the record, I'm not against charging stations. Solar panels are improving greenways. I believe we should be good stewards of the environment. My issue is the city involvement. I believe that private businesses or organizations should install charging stations or solar panels themselves and bear the responsibility of all that entails, and not the city. It provides too many opportunities for impropriety to occur otherwise. The focus on the city should be taking care of and maintaining the current infrastructure. In my opinion, the grant provides additional and necessary burdens that aren't beneficial to the citizens of Fort Smith.
Okay, thank you.
For these reasons and more, I believe the board should not approve the resolution and should end any agreement previously approved. Thank you.
Next, we have Reverend Stephen Kurtz.
Hello, and thank you. I'm here to represent many constituents as part of the leadership team of the Citizens Climate Lobby and other people in support of this resolution. Instead of hearing from many of us, as we have previously several times, the CCL has appointed me as a representative to respect your time tonight and to reaffirm what we have at previous meetings several times already affirmed in support of this grant. So I would like those who are here in support of receiving this grant money to please stand. And I would like to ask for a show of hands, those of you who are from Ward 1, would you raise your hand? Okay, those from Ward 2, those from Ward 3, those from Ward 4. Thank you. You can be seated. So please, our request is to finally pass this resolution and let Joshua get to work on these worthwhile projects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Joe Elskin.
I just wanted to thank you for putting up with me for the last 2 years over these kinds of issues. Thank you.
Dr. Charles Hartsfield.
Well, there's a lot to read in these bills, and I respect the fact that it takes a lot of time. I spent 2 or 3 hours, 3 or 4 hours actually, just looking through this, and finally just kind of wore out. But a lot of money's coming down the hill to Fort Smith, and that sounds real good. But and it'll be covering the greenway rehab, the EV chargers, and the solar panels, and it was already mentioned how about maintaining those over a long period of time. I had the question last time, have we checked with other cities who've done this same thing and taken the money, and are they pleased with the program? I haven't heard that yet. In my reading some of the statements that I saw in reading, the money is only for projects that are required, whatever that means. In the event of noncompliance, the government has the authority to withhold or demand repayment of the funds. Is there a control issue here? The subrecipient, that's us, accepts responsibility for 100% of its sub-allocated project costs should any project not be completed as specified. And who specifies that? And we agree to maintain control of the new greenway spaces until the year 2050. What will that add to the city budget? If we should get slack in that agreement by some federal standard, do we get a fine? We cannot cease maintenance due to obsolescence, cannot abandon any portion of the project, and cannot make alterations. And the e-bikes, I don't know how many there are, require detailed reports of energy usage, and savings. I don't know how in the world you calculate the savings when a few folks ride e-bikes. And last summer we heard that a government study claimed less than 2% of Fort Smithians walked or rode a bike to work. The stated long-term government goal is to get almost half of the local folks walking or biking to work, and we hope that's not true. The bottom line, we're looking at a ton of record-keeping, reporting, and compliance. We as citizens have to trust that you, the board, have studied this thoroughly and are convinced that this is the best thing for our city for now and long term.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Becky Hartsfield.
Good evening. I'm going to read fast. I would again like to express my concerns over the implementation of projects funded under the EPA Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. The subrecipient referred to in this document is the City of Fort Smith. On page 70 of the agenda, item 10 states that the subrecipient accepts responsibility for 100% of the sub-allocated project cost incurred. Do we know for sure the extent of these costs? Also on page 70, the City of Fort Smith agrees to assume responsibility for all maintenance of the greenway, e-bikes, charging stations, and solar panels. How much will this cost the City of Fort Smith each year? Will the city need to contract with outside businesses or hire more city staff to take care of all this work? Presently, citizens complain about how the upkeep of parks is not always adequate. This project will add a significant amount of work. What will be the cost incurred? On page 72 of the agenda, the last sentence of item 20 states, quote, "The subrecipient understands and agrees that Metroplan may cause necessary funds to be withheld from the EPA subaward if subrecipient fails to complete any project as specified or fails to adequately maintain or operate any project," close quotes. If funds are withheld, how much might taxpayers be on the hook to complete and maintain any of these projects? The City of Fort Smith's history of follow-through has not been great. There are so many regulations with the entire grant. I could see how something like this could possibly happen. It seems that the City of Fort Smith should pay its bills, particularly the $800 million debt of the consent decree, before incurring more expenses. Sometimes folks hear free money and get on board too quickly without thoroughly researching the fine print. Is this really free money? Thanks.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jerry Donaldson.
Oh, good evening and welcome to the new year. Thank you. I got to admit I'm a mugwump. My dad used to use that expression, my mug's on one side of the fence and my wump on the other. Anyway, this is a sweet deal for some special interests. There's no doubt about it. There's going to be some good things in it, and some people are going to benefit. Is it for the whole city? That's a question you guys have to answer. One thing I would say, though, is we know the city's got an excellent website. You compare it with some other public service websites, and the city is far and above. What I'd request is that all these monthly, quarterly, and annual reports that get issued that are required by the document to be posted directly on the website so that people don't have to do a FOIA to find out what is being reported as far as progress reports. The other thing The other thing is, some of these grants require that you identify disbenefits. I never heard the word before, disbenefits, but you can imagine what it is. I didn't see any disbenefits identified. That may not be applicable to this grant, but that would be an open question. Lastly, is on page 117, it does refer in the document submitted to a number of issues that I believe were probably, on the mic, were probably an addition of what was going to happen in Fort Smith as well as Metroplan, but it was not clearly labeled that way. So on page 117, it says 455 acres will be purchased and are placed in conservation. 916 acres of restored green network lands protected from disturbance. 2,073 acres of restored forest. 2,158 acres high-quality land restoration, and 5,800 e-bikes. I think it needs to be clarified. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Molly Echeverria.
Good evening. It's worth noting that the EPA receives significant funding from the Inflation Reduction Act. The IRA provides the EPA with $27 billion, nearly 3 times more than the agency's entire appropriation. This substantial funding was intended to bolster our environmental initiatives and support domestic innovation. However, if these funds are mismanaged or directed toward foreign interests, we may not only waste taxpayer dollars, but also undermine our own economic goals. The Biden administration issued final regulations concerning the electric vehicle tax credits that are part of the IRA. While the intention behind the IRA was to promote clean energy and support American manufacturing, these new regulations raise serious concerns. First of all, these regulations appear to prioritize the interest of foreign entities, particularly those ties with Chinese Communist Party, by allowing the Chinese billionaires and EV manufacturers to profit from American taxpayer dollars. We are undermining the very principle of fairness and accountability that should guide our financial support. Furthermore, the regulations imposed by the IRA allows battery manufacturers to source critical minerals from countries without free trade agreements with the United States. By permitting such sourcing, we risk weakening our position, and we lose the advocate for American-grown products and could potentially open the door for countries that do not uphold the same labor and environmental standards that we hold. So in conclusion, we want to maintain our American values, and this agreement tears that down.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Dan Williams.
Good evening again. On this, when we spoke on this last time, I had a couple questions. They still hadn't been answered. How many grants do we now have in our city? Who oversees them? And then my other question is, how many grants do we have or have had that we're still having to maintain? Does anybody have that answer?
Chris Hoover would be the guy that has that. He's our grants administrator.
All right.
So
I think it's significant that the board knows how many grants we have or have had that we still have to maintain, because that has to do with accountability and oversight. And so I would like for someone on this committee to find that, and I'd like to answer almost, when you have time, get that maybe for the next meeting. We've had. I've dealt with grants. I'm also a pastor here in town. 17 years ago, my church got a grant, and we were going to do a Saturday meal, and we've done that now for over 17 years. The next year, we went to file for that grant, or I had a gentleman in the church that wanted to file for that grant, and I said, we're not going to file for it. And he didn't understand why, and I said, well, one of the reasons why is because we're in the lowest income part of town here in North Fort Smith, and if we can't fund this ourselves, anybody that comes and takes advantage of that, we're not setting a very good example for them how to live beyond into the plans and purposes that God has created us to be in. And too many people have a poverty mentality and they want something for nothing. And I think we've kind of set the example the wrong way. And we need a board, a strong board. We need strong leaders. And we don't need people worried about putting their names on plaques and things like that all around town. We need people that will take a stand for the Lord thy God and let Jesus be the head of this town. Amen?
And last, we have Joey McCutcheon.
Joey McCutcheon, Fort Smith. Thanks for having me. My big concern is that we gave away our local control at least a year ago in July. We had a city administrator who signed 2 memorandums of agreement with 0 approval from the board. One of them with the Metroplan and the Northwest Arkansas creating a coalition, which this board never approved. And then we had an energy plan floating about in the state, which this board never approved. By its own terms, is a radical energy plan, which was created by our former city administrator and many of the folks sitting in this room, that the board never approved. You sat in this very room and that document was never given to you and you never approved it, yet it's floating around out here. And now we're getting an 86-page agreement, subrecipient agreement, which probably many of you haven't read and certainly don't understand the terms, I would say. But the question does become, after 5 years, what happens? What happens with this staff person that we're now hiring? What happens with the maintenance of the, quote, greenway? According to the other manifesto that this board is yet to consider, Move Fort Smith, it's going to be $5,000 per mile per year to maintain the greenway. Who's going to pay that? And where are our priorities? As a prior speaker said, we've got an $800 million consent decree, which hopefully and unfortunately the green community has not stood up for, rarely ever speaks about, that we're pumping all of this sewage into our city. So I think we need to have priorities, but there are future consequences to what we're talking about. One of them is security. Folks are going to gravitate toward the greenway. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. That's all. Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, we entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. This time, we entertain comments from the board. Director Rigo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to speak for a few moments on this. You know, I also happen to believe that we should be good stewards of the things that are in front of us and the choices that we have to make. It's good stewardship, in my view, to utilize federal dollars that are returned to us. When you talk about, looking here at the breakdown, it's up on the screen, $10.5 million to urban greenway, alleyway, rehabilitation, the charging stations, and solar panel installations. You know, the alleyway money is going to be used to take care of and rehabilitate something we should already have been doing. I mean, we should already have been maintaining the rights of ways and the alleyways, and so hopefully this kickstarts us back into a season of meeting our obligations when it comes to maintenance. And when we talk about the solar panels and the charging stations, and I must confess, I think there's a little bit of political ideology that seeps into these discussions because maintenance costs constantly get brought up, disregarding the fact that the solar panels are warranted for 20 years. So they must be fairly sturdy, or else no one would offer a warranty with that coverage. That would not be a smart business proposition for them. Should we not buy new playground equipment because we might have to care for it someday? When you look at different costs, different types of energy, should we not update HVAC units in buildings that we own because, well, we might have to take care of that AC unit someday? And, you know, I just have a sneaking suspicion when you talk about the charging stations and the maintenance costs associated with 7 charging stations as a reason for opposing this. Again, it smacks of some ideological arguments to me, because I happen to believe that if the EPA was offering millions of dollars in grants to purchase gas pumps for city fleet vehicles, I don't think we would have a parade of people talking about what the maintenance costs might be down the road for new gasoline pumps. Thank you, Mayor.
Director Kevin Settle.
Thank you, Mayor. Last meeting, I asked Jeff to give me what the grants other cities applied for and what they were for. And I think it's fair to share to the public what they were for, because I think this grant could have gone a totally different way. And I want to tell you what I think. First of all, Northwest Arkansas, $24.9 million for land preservation and restoration. They're doing creek restorations up in Northwest Arkansas with this money. They're fixing embankments, drainage, flood areas. That's what they're doing with their money here. Trail construction in Northwest Arkansas, $4.6 million. Go to Central, so total Northwest Arkansas is getting $36.2 million. Central Arkansas, land preservation and restoration is $15.5. Trail construction, $8 million. Fleet replacement with EVs, $1 million. This is one that carried me is street light replacement with LEDs, $5 million. Public building efficiency grants, $3.5 million. Commercial building efficiency revolving loan fund, $3.5 million. And finally, the Clinton National Airport geothermal well field, $7.7 million. This thing could have been gone 1,000 different directions to help the city, instead of what we're doing today. We could have got streetlights, LED, that I've been advocating for years and years for. We could have got for help with creeks and drainage. We've got the Poto River, Mill Creek that needs some embankment work, but we didn't. We went after e-bikes, charging stations. That's where I have a problem with this. There was other things in this grant that this board should have made a decision on. It's already been done, but this information should have been brought to the board, because we could have gone a different direction, totally.
Thank you.
I got one more thing there. So, Jeff, the last thing is, why is Metroplan, the Little Rock Metropolitan Planning District, the one that's governing this? Why didn't Northwest Arkansas Planning District, why didn't Wapatiti, why wasn't it given to the planning districts in the areas they were given? Do we know that answer?
It was envisioned as a consortium of the 3 regions, and we were when the process started, we as a city went and participated in the project, and as it grew, the other regions sent their planning organizations, and we continued to participate as a city.
Yeah, but should we have not altogether had each planning district in each zone to do it? Because to me, having Little Rock give this grant is not healthy either. So, thank you.
Okay. Director Christina Casavas, and then Director Good.
I would just say I don't entirely disagree with Director Settle. I mean, there are projects that I would have preferred to see versus the ones we selected, but you know, we've got it and we're here now, and if we let this $11 million walk out the door, I mean, it was mentioned it's not free money, and that's right, it's not free money, it's our tax dollars, and that money is not going to go sit in an account somewhere, it's going to be distributed to other competing cities. So our money is going to other cities for people to compete against us.
Director Good.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Christina Casavas, for your comments. Just my first comment is directed towards Director Settle's comments also. You know, like Director Christina Casavas said, you know, we may have wanted other things to do. you particular, noted there are some things that you would like to do. This is not the first grant we're going to apply for, nor is it going to be the last. So if there are other things that we want to apply for grants for, we need to talk to those departments that, that would facilitate those grants. We have police departments that facilitate their own grants. The transit does as well. Parks does it well as solid waste. We have multiple departments that facilitate their own grants. So if there's something more that we want, we go to those departments and we'll make it be known. But it was asked by one of the speakers if we had confidence, in what in our staff and what these grants were purposed for. I have 100% confidence in our staff to carry out the task. This is nothing new. It was stated that we do not follow protocol or don't follow up well. I guarantee you that we have. I believe we've had 2 department heads that actually spoke in public meetings to that fact. I can't remember who they were, but I know it's been at least 2. So we do take care of business and we do follow up. Lastly is the thought of investment. We can't be too fearful, but yes, ask good questions. Matter of fact, let me start there. Some great questions were asked, and I appreciate that. How will these projects be maintained? Those are good questions. Are all these departments that are requesting these grants and approved by the board going to the departments that we're going to have to take care of those, particularly like parks or solid waste? So we need to make sure we have that communication. And if we don't have that communication, I'd like to encourage the board and staff to make sure those departments are talking to these departments, particularly parks and solid waste, that may be affected by these grant approvals. But the other thing is, it's just the pure investment of what we're doing. We have to see that we, as a community, are worth the investment. And we have great staff to make sure that we are in compliance. And we have great citizens that make sure that the board and staff hears your voice and what you want. You are valued and you deserve some of your money back in this kind of form. Thank you.
Director Kemp.
I was going to ask if Mr. Robertson could come up. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Robertson. I just have a couple questions. What happens with the EEI plan tonight if it's to be approved?
That's a good question. It's done.
The purpose of the EEI plan is now concluded.
So this will not be a standing plan?
No.
To labor over the board or the city? If this is approved, it goes away?
Yes, the intent of that was the priority action plan, which was a part of the memorandum of agreement with the state Office of Air Quality, Energy, and Environment. And so now that, and the only thing that came from that plan was these 5 projects and programs that were funded through the grant. Now next, like I stated in the last meeting, the next part of that agreement is that we have to submit a comprehensive action plan to the state by August of this year. And we already have it scheduled on February 25th to discuss that with the board, because a comprehensive plan is a future-facing type plan, not just an intent for a grant application.
So the directors that are sharing that they even themselves were caught off guard, going forward, anything related to this would come before the board. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Are we planning to reapply with this fund for future items?
Oh, I guess I don't understand the question. What was the question?
These grants, the raised grant, that these things that have been in existence for decades across Republican and Democratic administrations, it's been a standing fund, but just different names. Are we planning to reapply even if future opportunities come up?
Yes, and with the new administration that's coming in, there could be other infrastructure, but any grants that we've done before that are revolving, we'll continue to apply for those, and any others, but those will be brought to the board for resolution as an intent to apply.
So is it fair to say that if there are other ideas that we would love to pursue in the future, that by taking these dollars and doing the right thing by the NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity, that we would be eligible to redirect opportunities using the same grant for new projects.
That is correct.
And that maybe our favor would be increased by accepting.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, I'm sorry to inundate here. I'm just going through my items, listening to people. Does this fit with the Arkansas investment priorities?
Yes. The projects that we put into the application as the City of Fort Smith and as the coalition fed into the Arkansas investment priorities for the IRA and other grants from the federal government.
Then the upkeep and maintenance of these solar arrays, are they on us?
Yes, but because we will be getting the offset utility rate, just as we discussed when we brought that to the board and we showed what that would look like, we're actually going to be able to pay for the land lease, the operation and maintenance, the insurance, and then also the inverters that actually hook the solar array to the grid through the offset of savings from utilities before it actually goes to the customer.
Okay. And then I think that's it. Thank you so much. I would just say, perhaps what we can do, as I think it shows goodwill to accept these dollars, if we can redirect priorities to, this fund is in existence for decades. From my understanding with Mr. Hoover is that this has been going on since the Bush administrations, like in the 90s, and it's just had different names and rebranding. But the nuts and bolts of it has been there, and maybe perhaps we can just put on a future study session and look at and discuss what our philosophy is for searching for grants, frame out a policy, an idea, or direction points to be looking for so that our employees can feel released to not be micromanaged, but do what they're doing and then report back to us some wins and successes. But I've enjoyed my discussions with Joshua Robertson, and he seems very sharp, and I appreciate you and thank you for your efforts.
Thank you. Director Neil Martin.
Well, I'll be brief. I think for me, the issue started with the Energy and Environment Action Plan that we never received. And basically everything we're doing tonight is related to that plan. So I think that's been my frustration from the get-go. We've been 4-3 this whole time. So, I think I think everybody spoke. If you guys would like, I think we should call the question.
I'll second that.
Okay. Madam Clerk. Okay.
It takes 5 affirmative votes to end debate, right?
Right. Call the roll on the question.
Directors Arrigo,
Yes.
Good,
Yes?
Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas,
Yes.
Christina Katsavas,
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Motion passes 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Call the roll. Now you may call the roll on the vote.
Directors Good,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas,
No.
Christina Katsavas,
Yes.
Settle,
No.
Martin,
No.
Arrigo.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 in favor and 3 opposed.
Item number 6.
Thank you, Mayor. This item provides for the appropriation of funds to support the maintenance of downtown areas with city staff. This action will provide a constant presence of staff in the downtown district and allow for regular attention to the maintenance and repairs of items. Sarah Duster, Director of Parks and Recreation, will address this item.
Thank you, Mr. Dingman. The Parks Department, this is maintenance we've contracted to a third party since 2010. And during the budget, the current contract is up, and we looked at it, and it's more cost effective to bring this in-house. And looking at that, funds were removed from our 2025 maintenance budget in favor of this. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but bringing this in-house also allows us to expand some services and also mitigate some of our long downtime in the Riverfront downtown area. And you will see in the budget or in the ordinance, there is an appropriation, a revenue is how it's shown from the Central Business Improvement District, their special levy. They are contributing $44,000 to this as part of one of their special assessment initiatives that they want to improve the aesthetics from downtown. So while these positions are under our department, they will be doing some of the work to achieve the goals of the CBID with that funds.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments on this item, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we have one. Dan Williams.
Yeah, again, when I was at the October business meeting, that was discussed, funding for that. Is that something still that the Central District business people are involved in, the funding of those two ambassadors that go around on scooters, or what?
Well, that's different, but yes.
But, so that's where the funds are coming from for that, the $44,000?
Yes, from the CBID assessment, yes, sir.
Okay. And then I guess my other comment is, you know, the parks through the holidays were amazing. I know that there were a lot of things that were going on, and the lights and everything were awesome. I just encourage you on that. And Sarah's done a fantastic job. I guess the interesting question I might have is, what happened to the New Year's Eve drop? What happened there? Does that have something to do with the central business stuff?
That has never been a city-sponsored function.
Downtown Business Owners Association put that on every year.
The CBID?
No, the Downtown Business Owners Association. Separate entity. That's a group of the business owners downtown. CBID is kind of a different deal.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you.
Jeff, since it was mentioned, would you mind to explain how the CBID assessment is funded? I think a lot of people are unclear on that.
Sure. The CBID petitioned the board to assess themselves essentially by a petition of a majority of the property ownership interest in the downtown area within a defined district. And what they do is they assess it's through the mechanism of the county property tax function. It's a special improvement district, and so they receive funds according to their a millage that they set each year, and it's set at 8 mills. And those funds come to actually come through the city because we administer that for them and dedicate that into a specific fund. And those dollars, as have been mentioned, go to personnel expenses for ambassadors. The board decided to shift that from 2 ambassadors to an ambassador and a police officer, if you remember from the budget discussion. So that's been incorporated into the budget. But essentially those dollars go into a fund for the operation and maintenance of the CBID's adopted plan of improvement. And so what the CBID adopted was to sponsor the ambassador program, which they've adjusted for this year, but also for the beautification, the clean and green of downtown. And that's specifically what Sarah's trying to address here, to make efficient use of those dollars. We tried going through a third-party contract arrangement for the complete care of the downtown area. As Sarah mentioned, we've carried a third-party agreement for many years, which isn't doing all of the things that the CBID would like for it to do. They would like to see a presence of personnel downtown, and that's why they've chosen to direct some of their assessment dollars to this. That's more than what you asked, but I just got on a roll.
In the weeds. So I get some questions about this. There's a little confusion around it. So unless you own property in the CBID district, you're not paying this assessment, correct?
That is correct. Okay. It is only on, and you should know whether you're in the CBID area or not. There's it's an area defined by ordinance of the city.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Madam Clerk, please call. Let's see, we need a motion to adopt the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Now, any further comments from the board? Director Neil Martin.
So, Sarah, I did have questions about it. So, City Administrator Dingman mentioned it. So, with that assessment, the clean and green is something that the CBID initiated. These are funds from that clean and green that will then go to your department. Is that correct?
So the Clean and Green initiative, as it's been termed,
because it was like $100,000, I thought, if I remember right.
When the bids we actually received for it, we tried the clean and green, which encompassed both what we are already currently doing and an expanded service that the CBID would like to accomplish. And we did an advertisement for bids, and we contacted people, no bids, and then we did it to where it was just the clean portion, which was graffiti, statue maintenance, streetscape maintenance, and that came in at over $200,000. So whenever we got that back, Jeff allowed me to work with our department, and we said, we can do this in-house, it's more cost-effective, and then whenever we presented that to the CBID, they were willing to provide funds for that because it's achieving the purposes they want as well.
So did we ever do the quote-unquote clean and green? Did the CBID ever do any clean and green?
No.
Okay, so that never happened.
No. We tried to make it happen, but it did not.
Right. So, okay, that's interesting. Have we ever power washed sidewalks down there?
We have not.
Never. So that would be what this would do.
Yes, and fortunately we have a existing power washer that we can use, so that's a cost we don't have.
Okay. What's the CBID doing with the extra $66,000 I think that they budgeted for the clean and green?
Well, I'll say part of what they've done is reallocated their budget. It will cost more to fund a police officer than an ambassador, so part of those dollars have been reallocated to that.
To police officer?
And then
specifically for downtown?
Yeah, well, yes, but although it's been made clear that the direction of the police officer still will remain at the direction of the chief and the supervisory staff.
And we went through that the end of last year.
Yes, sir.
Right, yeah.
But the dollars that they are accumulating are available for things like materials or improvements that this crew may utilize.
Okay.
And also, the CBID went through a process with MAHG to identify specific projects that they'd like to accomplish downtown. So some of those dollars will be directed towards some of those projects as well, such as the courtyard project and some improvements on pedestrian corridors.
I'm very much looking forward to seeing what your crew can do downtown.
We have a very talented crew, so I'm glad you're going to give us the resources to do that.
Right, thank you.
All right. Director Kemp.
Hey, Sarah, good to see you tonight. Thank you for your work on this. I guess my question, I think I'm working backwards listening to Mr. Dingman too, but I have a second to follow it. Why 44,000? How did they arrive at that number? Was that a number we requested? And then the second one is, what about future years? Is that something they will re-up on in the future, or are we going to need to adjust our budget? And that's the question I have. Thank you.
Yes. So the 44,000 came from, we looked at what we're currently doing and how that aligns with what extra the CBID wants to accomplish. And we did that percentage based, and it's based on what we currently experience mowing wise in other areas, and also looking at the time it takes when we've previously contracted it for them. And we arrived at a percentage, and that 44,000 was right at that. And Mr. Dingman can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is a recurring contribution the CBID is willing to make, provided we are successful on our end in meeting their expectations.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
I'll just say to that, I have no doubt that when Sarah shows the success of this operation to the CBID members, that they will continue to support it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Please call the roll.
Directors Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas,
Yes.
Christina Katsavas,
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rigo,
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
We'll go to item number 7.
Item number 7 is a resolution to approve an engineering services agreement with Hawkins-Weir related to a Basin 12 SSA Remedial Measures project. Director of Water Utilities Lance McAvoy will address this item.
Basin 12 is one of the identified basins that we're required to do in the consent decree. This was actually assessed prior to us entering into the consent decree, and we have until the end of the consent decree to actually complete all of the work. There is a portion that is part of Sub-Basin P005 that is actually considered part of Basin 12. And when we looked at it, there are several lines that are not caught in P005 Sub-Basin that need to be designed for remediation. This project would basically allow us to contract with Hawkins-Weir to do that work. Hawkins-Weir did the initial sanitary sewer assessment remedial measure plan for all of Basin 12, so they're well versed in what needs to be done. That's why they were chosen for this, is because it's actually going to save time and money, because they've already been paid to have an idea of what needs to be done. Whereas if we went with another engineering firm, they would have had to have started over from scratch. So we're looking at doing something that's going to reduce the cost of this project. We're looking at rehabbing 24 manholes, 23 line segments, and those pipe sizes range from 18-inch to 20-inch. Some of that may be by open cut, CIPP, which is the cured in place piping, and pipe bursting, but again, that's going to be part of the engineering decision made. Total cost of this project is $224,440, and that is a not to exceed amount, and it should take them about 180 days to get that design to us. Of course, if they do not use that entire amount, that money is put back into construction project, and this is paid for by the sales and use tax. I'll stand for questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any citizens' comments, Madam Clerk?
We just have Larry Yancey to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Need a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Directors George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Rigo.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Kemp.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Go to 8.
This resolution sets a date for a public hearing regarding proposed rates for sanitary sewer services. Mr. McAvoy will address this item as well.
Back in 2022, when the voters approved the 5/8% sales tax for consent decree projects, sewer rate increases were frozen for a period of 3 years. And then after that 3 years, they would be raised by no more than 3.5%. In our continued negotiations with the consent decree, we have made it very clear to EPA and DOJ that the Board of Directors stand by this. For a new rate increase for sewer, it's a little bit different than water. We have to basically have a public hearing, but before that's done, the board has to set a date. After the introduction of the ordinance, which is kind of being done tonight, the board sets the public hearing date. The notice must be published at least 10 days in advance of that public hearing date. And then prior to the ordinance being adopted, the board does conduct a public hearing. At each of your place is a fresh copy of the draft ordinance that will be associated with it. There was an error found, and I want to thank Director Martin because of his due diligence. He was looking at something, asked several questions, and as staff was going over it, basically found an error of mine. And so, Director Martin, I want to thank you for your due diligence on that. And where that is in the BOD and TSS surcharges. That's the only place it was, and that impacts about 27 industries that are part of our pretreatment program. The publication date, should this pass tonight, would be on Sunday, January 19th, and that will be in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette local edition. And then on February 4th, to ensure that there was plenty of time for the public to see that, for the board to digest it, that was when the public hearing and hopeful vote for the rate would be done. February 4th, what did I say? Yes, February 4th is when the public hearing will be had, but we need to get it published and out there, and that has to be done 10 days prior, minimum 10 days. It can be more, and working with our very wonderful city clerk, July 19th is when, January 19th. You can tell I had 2 weeks vacation and I'm still a little rusty, I apologize. January 19th is when it will be published for a February 4th public hearing and then vote by the board. I'll stand for questions.
Okay. Are there any citizens' comments, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we have one. Jerry Donaldson.
Just an aside to start with, there was some discussion in previous meetings about the use of CCF versus gallons. And just to make it simple on folks, if you look at a 55-gallon barrel, taking half of that, and you fill that, and that's the amount of water you use in a day, at the end of 1 month, you're going to have used 1 CCF. So if at the end of the day you've used a 55-gallon barrel, at the end of the month, you're going to have used 2 CCF. Those are approximations, but it works real good to think in your head, if I'm using 25 gallons a day, it's going to be 1 CCF a month. Anyway, so I support what Lance is doing, and I think the city is doing that support as well. I appreciate everything that he and staff are doing in that regards and your support for him. I think there's a little dissonance, though, if you look at page 196 of the attachments from today, which is the ordinance that you're coming before you tonight. Section 4 of that ordinance talks about the months of April through October, residential customers' sewer bill would be based upon average monthly water usage during the previous 5 months, November through March. The dissonance is that in your website and mailings, and I printed one out here, but it happens to be in Spanish, but the gist of it is that what you represent in that is that there are 5 months, November through March, but one of those, the high month of water use, is dropped from your average. So there's a dissonance between what you've got in the ordinance and what you posted online. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. This time we entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments from the board?
Yes, Mayor.
Yes, Director Rigo.
Before, if this passes tonight and we head into a meeting on the 4th, Mr. Dingman, before, and I guess Mr. McAvoy, as we are disseminating information about this, both externally and internally, I always find it's helpful to have, what's known as the red line. So could we may we have, both for public and communicative purposes and for our working purposes heading up to the 4th of February, where the rates are at now, and then what this new proposal is. So everything you got on here, understand, but can you also list what all those rates are at present?
Yes.
Thank you.
Director Neil Martin and Director Settle.
So, real quick, January 19th, it will go out to the Democrat Gazette. Can we get that on our social media, on our website as well? Okay, I think that's a good way to make sure that happens. And Mr. Donaldson, one thing to note is we're not approving that ordinance you referenced. We are just moving to a public hearing to discuss that ordinance. So any kind of change will be, if there's a problem with the ordinance, we'll get that changed. And when this goes before the board, ultimately, if we move forward, if it, let's say the public hearing goes fine, citizens are on board with it, we're proposing each 3.5% rate increase for the 6 years. We're not doing one at a time. We're doing all 6.
Correct. In my understanding from what was discussed in December is that this would be a goodwill gesture also for DOJ and EPA to see that the board and the city is serious about compliance, and this also will help with our debt service coverage. But that would be more of a discussion, I guess, with Andy Richards.
And so the way I understand it, January 19th, it goes, would be the notification. February 4th would be the public meeting. And then after that, the board would have to make some kind of decision to vote on rates, to not vote on rates, to
correct
do whatever. That would be the timeline here. Okay, thank you.
Director Settle.
Thank you. So when we asked the voters to vote on this, I remember sitting here with the board and sitting out a piece of paper, writing this out and saying no rate for 3 years, and then 3.5% year on year to the end of the term of the sales tax. And that's what we're going to, and we've stayed by that. And I know the EPA has been begging us to go higher than that. We've said no, because the voters voted it in, and that's the most important piece. When the voters vote something in with this covenants, we stick with it. It allows us to have more leeway and more leverage in our negotiation. So, go public hearing, but this is what we kind of told them. If we stay with this, it'll be that way, and that way we can't raise, future boards won't be able to raise it beyond that, and that's the key here. So, thank you.
Director Kemp.
Hey, Lance, thank you for your work on this and putting all the things you do together. When we talk about 3.5% and different things of that nature, when we talk about a cost of living increase, is that what we see the 3.5% at? Is that how we kind of arrive at a 3.5%?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Dingman, because that was 2022, and the rest of the board, I would say the rest of the board, because that was actually a decision made by the board.
What was your question, Director?
Well, I'm just referencing how do we arrive at 3.5%? Because are we thinking people's cost of living raises and then trying to find a percentage that flies within that radar? Or what was the math behind 3.5%?
I had a piece of paper here, and I don't know where I put it. It was 3 years ago, but I had a piece of paper here and sat down and started working it out while we were talking, and came up with some numbers, and it had to do with how much we were utilizing and how much we could get year on year, and the cost of increases, and how much money could we generate per year for capital, and how much construction we could do at the same time. Because if you raise it too fast and you put all the money away, you know, the cost of construction at the time, and now it's a little different than it was 2022, but that was the plan, is lock in for 3 years, because you're averaging $16 million in the sales tax. Yeah. So you've got to figure that. Is that about right? 16 million?
16 to 17.
I think 17 is where we're getting here. In
so at the time it was 15 to 16. So based on that, it did kind of based on that. Sales tax goes up about 2 or 3% a year. You put 3.5% rate on top of that. That keeps going up and allows for construction costs, because everything from the sales tax is a capital based. So it doesn't go into operation, just consent decree capital. How much money could you do in those 10 years at 15 times 10, $150 million? You do 3.5% for year 4 through year 10.
So if I hear you saying, Director, so you're saying we arrived at 3.5% basically just out of necessity of formulation of cost and things that expected inflation.
Yeah, and allowed us to put a covenants in there. So we told the voters, if you pass this, you won't go beyond that, because one of the questions that came up is, you pass this and the future boards raise it 10, 20, 30%. So we put this covenants in here. We've stayed by it. 3.5% is a fair rate to the keep going up, because the voters did pass the sales tax. So it's an 8-year sales tax, not a 10, 8 years. So year 4 to year 8, no more than 3.5% year on year for till the end of the sales tax will complete.
Okay, thank you. Director Rigo.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you, Director Settle, for your leadership on this, dating back a number of years. You've brought us to a good, responsible point today. I think to Director Kemp's point, I do think there's a smartness around, spreading out increases, if you will, in more modest amounts in a more regularized way, rather than going years and years and years at a time and then having to come up with, double-digit increases to meet costs. And I would just say, as far as communicating about this, you can never over-communicate about things like rate adjustments. And I know in the memorandum it talked about, after introducing the ordinance, the board must set a public hearing date. The notice of the public hearing must be published at least 10 days in advance of the public hearing date. I have no issue, of course, with a big Sunday audience for the newspaper. But to Director Martin's point about publicizing this as far and wide as what we have control of, I mean, I don't think there's any sense in waiting until the 19th. I mean, if we pass and set a date tonight for February the 4th, and we have access to social media channels, which we do, I think it's good to start sharing what we're asking folks to assess and be informed about on the 4th, and not just waiting till the 19th, because that's the 10-day threshold. I mean, if you go more than 10 days, that meets the at least threshold, but obviously still publish in the paper, because that is important to some people.
Thank you. Director George Casavage.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Are y'all? Hey, Lance, I heard two different things here tonight. Originally, it was that the 3.5% was for 10 years. Then I heard Director Martin say 3.5% for 6 years. Which is it?
It's 3.5% for 3 years we had a freeze.
Yeah,
so
I know
it's
that.
Really
Yeah,
for 5
I'm talking about
years.
after that.
It's 5 years.
It's for the length of the sales tax.
For what's left of the sales tax, which is 5 years.
No, but I'm talking about the new rate, the 3.5% rate increase.
Would be for 3.5%.
For how many years?
5 years.
What happened to the 10 years?
The sales tax was only an 8-year sales tax.
So after the sales tax expired, then we took out the difference.
Then at the end of the sales tax, there will either be a new sales tax or some other action will be taken at that time to determine what goes forward.
Okay, well, how much did the 3.5% increase that we're proposing, how much a year does that, how much more income per year does that bring in?
I'll be truthful with you, I left that paper and calculation in my office. I can get that to Mr. Dingman to send out to the whole board.
Because, Lance, just a simple math is we're $800 million in debt. You finance it over 10 years, $80 million a year, $80 million. This doesn't make sense. This isn't going to cover anything.
This is helping with the operations.
I know but it's not getting us anywhere, is what I'm saying. We're not making progress as far as reducing our debt service.
I would say in response to that this is a piece of what we need to do. There are 2 or 3 other pieces that we will need to do later, but this is the first piece that we need to do.
That's obvious.
And so, but to Lance's point that he already mentioned, this is something that we have incorporated into our response and our proposal to the EPA that we are going to do to try to start ebbing away at the things that we need to do to make ourselves financially responsible to be able to do the things we need to do.
Because a lot of people are thinking that this 3.5% is going to take care of the whole consent decree after the term's up.
It will not.
I know, that's what I'm saying, but that's what they're thinking.
Okay, well, and so here publicly I'm saying it will not.
Well, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So what do people? What do we need to look forward to in 10 years from now?
It's not 10 years from now. It's going
6
to be.
years,
It's going to be
whatever.
this year.
Yeah,
it is going to be this year. We're going to have to examine our sales taxes and how we allocate those to the 2 projects, including most definitely including consent decree and wastewater projects. How we use our sales tax funding to fund the big pieces of the capital projects, the hundreds of $millions at a time to get those projects done. That's a different discussion that we will also have later and within the next few weeks. This is the first piece of the puzzle.
Well, we also need to keep negotiating, too. We need to keep negotiating with the government because we have a real opportunity with the Trump administration now that we didn't have when he was in office the first time because we were suing them. They didn't want to work with us. Now we're not suing them. We're working with us, and we've got an opportunity we didn't have. So, any help we can get from the federal government, we need to be looking for that. I mean, they're imposing this on us. They should be helping pay for it instead of putting it on the backs of our citizens.
Director Rigo.
Well, and I agree with my colleagues, what Director Christina Casavas just expressed, and also, I mean, not to oversimplify, but it's sort of like, football. You have 4 downs to get 10 yards. Sometimes to get the 10 yards, sometimes you get it all in one chunk on a great long, 17-yard in route. Other times you got to take, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and then you break through for 4. So, there's not one silver bullet that is going to address the problem, but I think it's going to be a lot of smart things done in moderation that will get us to where we need to be.
Director Kemp.
Yes, even to the point of Director Christina Casavas, I agree on negotiations. My question is, has administration or our legal counsel even asked to, as long as we are in good faith making progress on consent decree work, to waive penalties for SSOs?
Yeah, we've tried that.
I'll answer that. And yes, we have asked that.
Yeah.
And the latest that we had, and this was basically 2-3 weeks ago, was either no or not at this time.
Well, I prefer
So-
not at this time, and
But-
I would encourage us to,
But what
honey
we...
gets more than vinegar.
Yeah, I understand, and we are continuing to negotiate. We are continuing to supply information as requested by DOJ and EPA. And the board, of course, will be notified if we have any other future meetings with them. I will tell you that I have been since 23 keeping up with our sanitary sewer overflows, and that's where we have the stipulated penalties that we have been paying on come from. Now, there are still the stipulated penalties that could be assessed for missed deadlines. That would go into dispute resolution because we had the 5-year granted by the court, and we're working on that aspect of it. But we have actually had less SSOs, less SSO days, and volume since 2019. 2024 was the lowest number of dry weather, wet weather, and overall volume discharged in SSOs since 2019.
And I think those are great points to bring up in our dialogue, that we are making great progress, and we're not asking you to forgive it all because it's work that should be done. It improves our infrastructure, but just please refrain from penalizing us. Well, pardon our progress, so to speak.
And the graphs that I had put together on that, actually, after our last negotiation discussion, the DOJ, the state had already requested that information from us. I'd provided it to DEQ. DOJ and EPA asked for those same graphs, sent those, and though I do know that those had been forwarded by Mr. Paul Calamita to DOJ and EPA to show our progress.
Director Christina Casavis, and then we're going to go to
Well,
Mr. Dingman.
just real quick, in the interest of saving time, I won't get into it since we're really just discussing the public hearing about it. But I would say, to bring our new director up to speed, part of the problem that I realized last year as we were getting into it, we're getting into these negotiations, because my frustration was we're making a good faith effort. We're doing the work. Every agenda item, agenda we have, there's items on it for the consent decree. Why aren't they seeing this? And I realized to them, Carl was the face of the city. So to them, Carl was the city of Fort Smith. So what the board was doing was almost a little bit irrelevant because of the messenger. So now we have an opportunity. We've got a new year. We're going to have a new face. And I think that that should go a long way towards negotiations. I hope so.
Mr. Dingman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I also will say that, as you'll recall, we had a good amount of discussion on our written response to the EPA, which would include our proposal for a financial plan to meet our obligations, and that was well discussed during the meeting on December the 10th. It was well received, I believe. The EPA and Department of Justice were able to ask a good amount of questions, got some answers, and now we are in a period of waiting for them to make a written response for what goes forward. But a critical part of that is sticking to the financial plan that we've proposed to them. And like I said, one of the first steps in that financial plan is the adoption of this set of sewer rates.
Director Rigo.
Thank you, and I'll just say, briefly to administration and the attorneys and Mr. McAvoy, something to consider as we move in with the new to the new administration and we get into, dialogues and things like that with them. It's former Representative Lee Zeldin has been nominated to run the EPA. He served with Congressman Womack. They've done some bipartisan work together on bills and things like that, and so it might be worth a conversation with our congressman exploring his relationship with the incoming EPA administrator, and that might be a possibility, just in general, the sense that I believe the EPA appointees, the directors in the first Trump administration, were not former members of Congress or people from Congress, and so could be a possibility for productivity there too.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Okay. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Directors Christina Gatsavis,
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rigo,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
George Gatsavis.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
This time we'll go to the consent agenda.
On tonight's consent agenda, there are 9 items. An ordinance abandoning a portion of 2 utility easements for Next Step Homeless Services Project. An ordinance to abandon a portion of utility easements by the Gold Trap Boys and Girls Club. Resolution authorizing partial pay on roof repairs. Resolution authorizing partial pay to the airport for construction costs on the arresting gear system. An ordinance repealing a previous ordinance regarding agreement with Microsoft Leasing. Resolution authorizing partial pay to Forsgren on utility relocation project. Resolution authorizing change order number 2 on a utility relocation project agreement. Ordinance adopting Water Advisory Committee charter. Resolution authorizing acquisition of water line easement for Lake Fort Smith transmission line project.
Okay, thank you. Is there any item on the agenda that you would like to pull for special discussion?
H. Oh, sorry, Mayor.
Yeah, H. I'd like H too.
Okay. Any others? Okay. We'll discuss H. Webb.
Yeah, so this is the Utility Advisory Committee. In looking at the charter, I think it was well written. The concern that I have is that if it were to pass as written, this would be the only committee that has that basically has insight into operational components and capital components without oversight of the board. I would like to, if I agree with the mission to research and investigate and review issues related to operations and related to capital projects, but I think as a board, as an elected body, we should have the authority to direct them in certain areas, not just free reign for them to. We have an audit department that we'll eventually have somebody in that role that will be able to perform audits on consent decree, which we have. We've been every year we've been auditing the consent decree project as a whole, but I feel like the board should add oversight into directing this committee where to go rather than them just having free reign. I think we've got to put some guardrails around it. And so I know that we have a lot of ideas. I would like to look at water leaks. I'd like to look at water meter replacement, those types of things. But I think we should be able to, as a board, provide enough guidance to the committee to set the committee to work. So I would like to make an amendment that these operations and utility capital projects are identified by the board first before they move forward. Yes. Do I need to formalize that? I make an amendment to have this charter updated to reflect utility operations and utility capital projects be researched as identified by the board.
Okay. Director Rigo.
I just had a question for clarification's sake, if I may. And this is for our city attorney. Mr. Canfield, as this document is written, pages 254 to 255 in our packet, 2-page document. Is there anything in here, in your opinion, that precludes the board having the leadership role that Director Martin has expressed?
No, the board can always either directly amend the charter or give directions to administration outside the charter.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Based on that, I'm going to second. I guess I'd like to have, I think it should be both sides. The board, what happens if they find something and Lance wants to direct them and then Lance tells us 2 weeks, 3 weeks later? I mean, I'm kind of seeing where you're doing and I'm not disagreeing, but there's got to be a way that allows Lance a little bit of leeway and the board to leeway too. I'm trying to figure out how to do that.
Well, I think,
what I'm trying to
well,
do?
if the committee has the authority to do whatever it wants, I think that puts the utility department in a difficult place.
Are you worried about like scope creep?
Yes, I'm concerned about scope
I
creep.
get
Yeah. That's a good word for it. And I think, as much as we've talked about the consent decree and as much as we've talked about water and sewer issues, we should be able to give them ample items to look at. Now, all of that's coming from Lance. Like, all the information is going to be coming from Lance. And so that's why I think we ought to have the guidance as the board. We should have the guidance as to what we want that committee to do. No other committee has that authority to look into operations of any department that we have. Am I right?
That is my understanding.
Right. So I think this allows us to be able to focus them in a certain area and can allow them to provide us the information that they need timely. My expectation would be that committee comes to the board and provides updates to us rather than Lance. Is that how you were?
Yes, I'm actually wondering, can we table this, ask Lance to update it, and bring it to a study session next week, go through it, and then vote on it in 2 weeks from now? I mean, it's kind of with your direction.
Do we need to do that? Can we just amend it now and
But
move on?
how's that amendment look? Because you're saying directed by the board, which we do, but you got scope creep. How do you direct one way? Does that pretty much take Lance out of it and say, this is the way you can direct?
And if the board is going to be the entity directing, I would like to have it be a structure where the board as a whole votes on things. It's not one, a board member.
It's not a pet project, right? Yeah, I would agree.
I'm just trying to make sure that the charter is sound and viable. If we can do that with your motion, that's fine. And that's the understanding of the director and Jeff, but just trying to come up with a solution here that we all could come together on.
I might offer, if you happen to be looking at page 254, where it identifies the scope of work, I might offer just the phrase at the beginning of that very first sentence, as directed by the board of directors, comma, the committee may request. I think that.
I mean, I think you give a lot of leeway to the committee.
Well, I mean, but it is as directed by the board of directors.
I mean, you say putting that in each
No,
item
putting
for the
that
scope of work.
as at the very front of just that first line. Well, I mean, I offer that. I mean, you can expand on other areas if you think it's needed on other lines as well.
Well, I think it's important, at any rate, I think it's important that the board provide the direction.
I'll second his motion and ask the administration to, if the board passes that tonight with the amendment, that they come back with the final verbiage to the board so we can oversee it. Okay. You good with that?
Okay. Director Kemp, you had a comment with that.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm at a philosophical moment here of saying, are we creating more work for Lance? And then the second thought I have is, if I'm going to direct this committee as one of the colleagues among all of us here, why do we need him? And then thirdly, is this really more of an audit commission, which we already have? And can we task the audit commission that already exists? And if we need to add to the audit commission, add to it, and then let them, if we need to look at one particular thing that we have concern about, and if we don't obviously want to spend big dollars having the audit and all that, and it's more of just an in-house look thing, then let the audit commission request to Lance to provide all the documentation pertaining to this one item, let them deep dive into it, bring it back to the board. But I feel like this is going to be government making it hard. We build the bridge, then we got to have a bridge operator, then a manager because we have staff, and then eventually we decide we don't want the bridge, we can't afford it. I just want to keep the simple process. I mean, I know you talked, Lance, about potentially adding to the staff for someone to be over operations, or someone that would allude to the idea of providing data and looking at operational data that would free you to lean on them a little bit. And I just feel like if we fill that vacancy, that person's doing this job, and then we can call in resources. But my concern, I was ready to lump this all in and vote because it's already been determined. But since we're talking about H, I would just say, for me, we're at a philosophical crossroads of how we're going to determine the future of the board and its oversight of the utilities. I would retain that if it was my opinion. Thank you.
Director Rigo.
I would say, given that we created an entity back on, December the 3rd, we do need to have some sort of decision, about it as far as how it should operate. I think Director Settle's suggestion and Director Martin is a wise one to bring it back at the next meeting and consider it as its own agenda item, not kind of grouped in with the consent agenda, and so that way it has a little bit more attention on it, and we can consider it and thoughtfully think about how we ultimately want to proceed with what could, I think, be a very important entity and a very helpful entity if we set it on the path to be most helpful and most relevant. And so, a pause probably is wise to get some of those edits or revisions put in for our consideration, and then just tackle it as its own issue in a couple weeks.
Okay. Director Settle, did you want to?
He made the motion, I second at the board, but if he's willing to pull it, I'm willing to put a table on it.
And bring it back in 2 weeks?
Yep.
I'm good with tabling H.
So motion to table item H with bring back to a week from now the study session with revised with Director Martin's comments.
Second.
Okay. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
This is essentially to postpone this matter to the January 21st regular meeting, correct?
Yes.
Director.
I'm going to revise this because I know he's not going to be here.
Yeah.
I table this to the first meeting in February.
February 4th.
February 4th. And bring it back to us next study session next week.
Yeah.
He won't be here, I know that already.
Yeah.
So. Okay. Is that it? Did I get a second for that?
Second.
Yes.
Will
Second.
any of y'all be here next week? Aren't you going to Little Rock?
I don't leave till Wednesday. I'll be here.
Okay.
Okay. You get that, Madam Clerk? Okay. Call the roll.
Director Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rigo,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas,
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Motion passes 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay. At this time, we will entertain a motion to adopt all consent agenda
So
items with
moved.
the exception of item H.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Were there any citizens' comments, Madam Clerk?
Yes, the first is item 9A, which is Alan Weaver. Just here for questions, okay. Nick Griffin is here to answer questions as well for 9A. 9F, Larry Yancey to answer questions. And then we do have Kim Fodge for item 9I, or 9H, sorry.
As many people are aware, I spoke against the Utility Advisory Committee previously. The board approved the creation of the committee, and I respect the board's decision. However, I do have additional concern about the organization of the committee. On page 2 of the charter, under the first paragraph, it states the city administrator shall nominate committee members and the board of directors shall appoint committee. I disagree with this. If the responsibility of the committee is to make recommendations to the city directors, then those same directors should make the nominations, appointments themselves. They should be able to determine who would have the integrity, knowledge, and qualifications to best serve on the committee. And for this reason, I ask that the board not approve the charter as written and make a motion to change the verbiage that the city board of directors nominate and approve members of the committee. Thank you.
I just had a question in that vein, I think, for clarity's sake. I mean, is that a linguistic mechanism that applies to other boards and commissions that allows for people to submit applications and things like that, because as far as I understand any of the things for boards or commissions that I've voted on in the last 4 years, there's never been an instance where any of us has nominated a person. The applications always come through the administrator's office from people who have, self-selected and filled out an application form. Is that what, I'm not saying the language can't be clarified, but is that what that language means, Madam Clerk?
I'm probably not the most appropriate to answer that.
I would say that's not what that language means. I think it contemplates the city administrator making those nominations. However, I think that it is probably a good idea to have it go through the regular application process that we normally employ, because even as such, if any of the board members or staff people have ideas of who might be good to serve on a committee, we encourage them to make application, and then it gets handled that way.
So the motion, we're going to table this until...
Yeah, but I agree with Ms. Fodge's change. I'll bring that next week when we talk during the study session.
Okay. So we need to vote, Madam Clerk.
The motion was to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item 9H, which was tabled to the February 4th meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Directors Martin?
Yes.
Rigo?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Kemp?
Yes.
George Katsavas?
Yes.
Christina Katsavas?
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
This time we will go to the official forum. Just to note, the jets, we have, we have jets on the ground in Fort Smith. The first two are part of the Polish Air Force. And they are pilots of training, doing some preliminary work down at Eglin Air Base. So that project is well underway. Also, the big project, the bridge, is finally getting underway. I understand close to a $300 million initial bid is going to be let for that bridge. It's going to be really tremendous for our region. And so with that, progress is really being made in our region, and we are want to make sure we recognize our congressional delegation for the work they're doing on our behalf. Director Rigo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Just did have something I wanted to kind of take the temperature of my colleagues here in this setting. As we move forward, obviously we've got two positions that we're responsible for, appointing, hiring, and firing people to, the internal audit position and the city administrator position. I know that there was some expressions made towards the tail end of last year about reposting for the internal audit position kind of after the turn of the new year. I think that's obviously something we need to keep on the front burner. And then with the city administrator position, I was just curious as to how folks wanted to approach that. I think that, I think we would be well served to not reflexively go to the search firm route and maybe work towards here by the middle of February, working with our own internal HR process. And I think this worked very well for the Convention and Visitors Bureau vacancy that we had a couple of years ago. Putting together, having HR put together for our review a job description for city administrator, and then posting that in the normal way, like any city job vacancy gets posted. And I think, we would be well served to see who applies and puts their name forward for that kind of over the next month or so, and then moving forward from there. So I just wanted to broach the topic. I didn't know if, as we reflected over the holidays, if we had thought about, how we want to move forward on these two vacancies. And so that's just a start of a discussion, I suppose.
If I might, in regarding the internal auditor position, that position has been reposted by our search firm, the one that we employed and contracted with last summer. There's no additional fee for that service. There's some additional fees for republicizing some of those things in the publications and such. but that process has started this week.
And is there a sense of when they are going to have some candidates for us to consider?
I meant to look up exactly what they posted in terms of if there's a closing date or a open until filled, but I forgot to do that.
Well, just let us know, and then I would think obviously if we have a swing and a miss again, we should likely step away and from the search firm and handle that process, at the local level. So
I'd like to see all candidates, not just a filtered batch, because if you'll remember when we were looking for the Convention and Visitors Bureau, we got quite a few we had to filter through. And the last process, the 3 they presented, I just had a hard time believing that was the top 3.
Oh, yeah, I mean, certainly anyone, that enters into that transfer portal, we should be able to take a look and see what they, what they offer and to us. And, if some number of us thinks, hey, person B looks pretty good, let's make sure to, we could communicate, I would assume, up the chain to the search firm, and, hey, NHR, hey, make sure this person knows that we're interested in interviewing them. You can't compel somebody to interview, but you can certainly let people know we're interested. That's a great point.
Director Good. Director Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few items. 2 are just more future talk. We can, I would love to ask that maybe we consider a future study session and open up our discussion again on homelessness in the city of Fort Smith. I feel like I have good friendships with area agencies and relationships with those people based on what I do professionally, but also have gotten to know city officials and then sitting in public meetings, listening to this board. And I think, we obviously have unfinished business, going back and figuring out best maneuvers and what we can do to come back to that discussion about as a board. And then the other one, perhaps for a future session as well, I really would love to see if Lance could propose, or administration, some way to look at how can we address water leaks being repaired up to maybe a quantity of 250 a month. I mean, leaks are going to happen. Our systems are old. It's just going to happen. But there's been a few discussion points that I've had where maybe we could perhaps look at when we fix the leak, but we have to fix it back because of the consent decree back to the main. Is there a way just to fix the leak, write a ticket for the consent decree part to come back to it, but getting the leak fixed? When I was running for office, I was just trying to test something, and I reported a leak on our text.gov system. And it's a leak driving up Fianna Hills on Jenny Lynn Road, and I drive it every day. And that leak is number 792 in the queue. So if we could get to doing 250 a month, then by attrition, we will get to people's leaks a little quicker. So I don't know if it's an equipment question, if it's a philosophy of repair, if it's he needs, more crews or more equipment, but how could we increase the threshold of more water leaks fixed in a month than we fix currently? And so those are future looking. And then the third item I just want to mention was I've had discussion from constituents about their connections with the county and connections to me and talking to me. And I would love to make sure that we can do some gesture to show an olive branch, if you will, to the county. Maybe some official memorandum that administration and county could work with Judge Holtz on, hey, moving forward, there will be no unilateral moves on either side, and maybe some discussion about the future outlay of that property so that we can come to some sort of peace, if you will, on the idea of this, of where the slides will go, how they'll be erected, how they fit the puzzle, but with they felt caught off guard, and they felt like maybe they were moved against. And so if we want to be the investor, is there a way for administration to offer that olive branch to the county in that way, maybe some sort of memorandum agreement with the future plan so that everybody has a cohesiveness for collaboration? Thank you.
I'll second those first two study session suggestions about homelessness and about water leaks.
Thank you. Director George Kasavage.
This is for Jeff. Jeff, Director Ken brought up the Ben Guerin, the water slides.
Yes, sir.
Have we purchased those?
Yes, sir.
Where are they at?
Parts of them, I believe, have been delivered, so they're in
Where
delivery.
the county said we're not putting them out there.
Well, we're putting them on property that we own right there next to the park.
We still don't have a lease with them.
We
What's?
we don't need a lease to use property that we own.
But no, we don't have a lease. Our agreement was they were going to lease us per share for $1 per year. Remember,
You mean
if
for
we
the
buy the
parking?
slide, if we buy the slides
For the parking, is that what you're talking
for
about?
the park, they were going to lease us the park for $1.
The whole park?
Yeah, they're half the park for $1.
Well, I think that
if
was-
we pay for this $4 million to
That was
slides,
floated. I don't think the quorum court ever voted on that. I think that was an idea that was floated.
Yeah, I would agree.
okay.
with
So if
Director
we don't do a lease with them, what happens to the $4.2 million slides?
George, we have a lease for 2030 already. The current lease is in place. 2032.
Yeah, I know. But what happens? So are they getting $2 million worth of slides from us?
Yes.
See, that's not right.
I think that's to my motion of administration I think we need to, the slides have been bought. I think we need to pump the brakes, not try to catch anyone else off guard, not start building the slides tomorrow, bring county back on and say, hey, we got it, we understand, we want to work with you, we want to partner with you, and let's talk about it. We won't do any unilateral thing, hopefully you don't either, and we clarify, and then come up with a plan of where they fit so that they understand it's coming, and then go back into action.
This is what contracts are for. We have a contract. We don't have to kumbaya with them. They have to honor the contract or we take them to court. It's that simple.
And if you do anything at all to delay it, you delay the opening of the season. Remember, season's only May through September.
I'm not even thinking delay, though. I'm just thinking, I think it needed to be, it's like it needs to just be mentioned, and I think surely we'd come to agreement within a week or two.
I believe Jeff has met with them already, and this topic's been discussed, and he's working through that already.
Good. That's good to hear. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm done.
Director Christine Kasavage.
I have a few things. Jeff, the FCRA still has not set an end date. I'd like to formally request that they do that. The indenture of trust never established one. And if they're not going to establish one that's reasonable, then, we need to see what our state officials will do about that. I think at this point, we can't even call ourselves a beneficiary because we get no benefit out of this trust. We've got Daniel Mann making 2% off every land sale. I mean, presumably, if the nuclear deal wanted to go in, he would sell it to him because he gets 2% of the land. And I think that's where they were looking at going, was out there, and that's out of our hands. We don't control the land sale on that. So that's a concern I have. They need to set an end date. If not, then we're going to look into setting one for them. Also, I think that this board of directors needs the hire and fire authority for the department heads back in our hands. I don't get a lot of claps, thank you. Carl's reign of terror is over, and we need control. We need a little bit of control back. I mean, he was constantly sucking power out of the board. We're here for public service. That's what we're elected for, and we need to be more involved in running things. So I'll let everyone think over that and see how they feel about it. That's my position on that. And lastly, I would like to just say a few words about Kelly Newton. We lost him while we were out over the break, and he was just such a wonderful man. I attended his service last week, and certainly gone too soon, but I almost came away from it a little bit uplifted about a man that had been so good to his community and his family, and what a good life he had lived, and it showed, and he leaves a big legacy, certainly in the jewelry business, not just in Fort Smith, but nationally. He was a big deal. He made Fort Smith so proud. National Jeweler just did an article about him that was really nice. And so, when we have people like this in our community that love Fort Smith, and they have a passion and they're so dedicated, I always want to honor their life and what they gave to their community. So definitely we'll be keeping the Newton family in our prayers. Thank you.
Here, here. Kelly was a wonderful human being.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Director Settle.
Thank you, Mayor. As the Mayor alluded to, the FMS project has started. Just remind the board that beyond the citizens watching us, coming to meetings and televisions, companies are watching us, and now countries are watching us on a daily basis. So let's be mindful of the new countries that are coming to us. We got a lot of new visitors coming to us, and just realize that they've got new people coming to our city. I got 3 motions I'd like to make. First of all, I'd like to make a motion for the board to have a discussion about a grants policy. We don't have one. We need a policy that how we apply for grants, what issues they are. I think item 5 has really showed me that if the board had a grants policy 2 or 3 years ago, some of the discussions we had might have changed what had happened. We could have gone a different direction with some of the funding and asked for different things, which might have changed the way this thing goes. So I'd like to have a future study sessions on a proposed grants policy for the board of directors. Okay. Second of all, in light of a new director and a new board, I think it'd be good for us to get out into the public. So I'd like to make a motion that the February, March, April, and May, potentially June, depends on how everything works out, first study sessions of every month go into the wards.
Second.
So we go into ward directors, maybe the university, Elm Grove Community Center, South Sub-Basin County, senior citizens, and maybe East Side if your church could do that. The first study session each month will go on the road, go in the public. We'll talk about our study session items, but allow citizens forum in that public, in that area, to be in that public so people can come in their wards and talk to us about their issues. And third is, based on what I already had written down, I'd like to make a motion to bring in, maybe it's part of the homeless discussion, bring in the CBID and the downtown business districts to a study session to talk about their impact of the grants pass ordinance not passing and what issues they're having with homelessness in downtown.
Second.
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Director Neil Martin.
Nothing for me, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Administrator.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we're going to go into executive session, and we're going to convene specifically to name a vice mayor and a member to the Audit Advisory Committee. At this time, we would like to announce that Director Jared Rigo will serve another term as Vice Mayor, and Director Christina Casavage will serve us on the Audit Committee. This time, I need a motion to accept all appointment nominations. Thank you. Second. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. A motion to adjourn. Thank you. Second. Thank you.